In the heart of Louisiana, where cypress trees weep Spanish moss and the air hangs thick with the scent of decay, lies a swamp whispered about only in hushed, fearful tones. It is a place shunned by the locals, a watery grave that holds a secret as old and dark as the mud itself. They call it the Blackwater Mire, and it is said to be the hunting ground of a malevolent entity known only as the demon of the swamp. This is not a tale for the faint of heart, for it is a story drenched in fear, tragedy, and the unyielding grip of a curse that refuses to die. It begins, as so many modern horrors do, with the ambition of a few who dared to mock the old ways and challenge the darkness they did not understand. A documentary crew, young, bright, and tragically naive, sought to capture a legend. Instead, the legend captured them. Ethan, the driven leader and director, saw the story as his ticket to fame. He was a skeptic at heart, a man who believed that every ghost had a rational explanation, every monster a man a mask. His lens was his shield against the unknown, a way to frame and control the world around him. Beside him was Maya, the group's historian and researcher. It was she who had first unearthed the legend of the swamp demon from a collection of forgotten local folklore. While she presented a professional, academic front, a part of her was drawn to the mystical, the unexplained. She felt a pull toward the swamp, a morbid curiosity that would ultimately seal her fate. Josh, the sound engineer, was the group's jester, his cynical humor a constant defense mechanism against his own deep-seated anxieties. He joked about everything from the buzzing mosquitoes to the chilling tailies of the demon, but his laughter always seemed a little too loud, a little too forced, as if trying to drown out a growing sense of dread. And then there was Claire, the production assistant and Ethan's girlfriend. She was the heart of the crew, the one who worried about their safety, who packed extra supplies, and who, from the moment their boat pushed off into the murky water, felt a palpable sense of foreboding that settled in her bones like a winter chill. Their journey began with a sense of adventure. They navigated the labyrinthine waterways, the drone of their boat's motor a jarring intrusion into the primeval silence of the swamp. They filmed sweeping shots of the gnarled cypress knees, breaking the water's surface like skeletal fingers, and they interviewed a few reluctant locals on the outskirts of the mire who spoke of the demon with genuine terror in their eyes. The elders told them of a vengeful spirit, a soul wronged and left to fester in the bog, its anger rising with the mists each night. They spoke of glowing red eyes that watched from the shadows, of a chilling whisper that carried on the wind, and of people who had ventured into the swamp, never to return. Ethan and Josh exchanged smirks, dismissing the warnings as the ramblings of superstitious minds, rich material for their film, but nothing more. Maya dutifully recorded the tailies, her expression unreadable while Claire shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her as if to ward off more than just the humid air. They were convinced it was all just folklore, a local ghost story embellished over generations to scare children and entertain tourists. They were tragically, horrifyingly wrong. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised purple, the crew set up their base camp on a small, muddy island deep within the swamp's core. The atmosphere shifted almost immediately. The familiar chirping symphony of the daytime insects and birds died away, replaced by an oppressive, unnatural silence. A thick, clammy mist rolled in from the water, blanketing their camp and reducing visibility to mere feet. It clung to them, cold and damp, muffling sound and distorting shapes. It was then that the true horror began to unfold, not with a sudden shock, but with a slow, creeping dread that coiled around their hearts. The first sign was the whispers. Josh, checking his audio equipment, suddenly froze, his headphones clamped to his ears. He swore he could hear a voice, a faint guttural whisper slithering through the static, speaking a name that was not his own. Ethan told him it was just radio interference, his mind playing tricks on him in the eerie environment. But then Maya heard it too, a sibilant hiss that seemed to emanate from the mist itself. A sound like dry leaves skittering across stone, yet there was no wind. The true terror arrived with the first visual manifestation. As Claire stood near the edge of their small island, peering nervously into the impenetrable fog, she saw them, 2 points of crimson light, burning with malevolent intensity, hovering just above the water's surface. They were like the embers of a dying fire, yet they pulsed with a cold, predatory intelligence. She screamed, a raw, piercing sound that shattered the silence. By the time Ethan and Josh rushed to her side, the red eyes had vanished, leaving only the rippling black water. They tried to calm her, to rationalize what she had seen as a reflection, perhaps an animal, but the seed of genuine fear had been planted. Later that night, as they huddled around a weak campfire, another chilling discovery was made. A set of wet, muddy footprints, unnaturally large and misshapen, led from the water's edge directly toward their camp, stopping just short of the firelight's reach before disappearing completely. There were no corresponding tracks leading back to the water. It was as if something had emerged from the depths, observed them, and then simply vanished into thin air. The jovial atmosphere of their expedition was gone, replaced by a tense, fearful silence. Every snap of a twig, every ripple in the water, sent fresh waves of panic through them. The disappearances began without warning, executed with a terrifying silence and efficiency. Josh was the first to be taken. He had wandered a few yards from the campfire to relieve himself, his nervous jokes having long since faded. The others heard a single sharp gasp, followed by the sound of something heavy being dragged through mud and water. They called his name, their voices trembling, but the only response was the mocking echo across the swamp. A frantic search revealed nothing but his abandoned flashlight, its beam cutting a lonely path into the fog, and a deep furrow in the mud leading directly into the black water. Panic gave way to hysteria. Claire was inconsolable, while Ethan, his skepticism finally shattered, desperately tried to formulate a plan, but there was no escape. The boat's engine wouldn't start, sabotaged by an unseen hand. Their satellite phone was dead, its screen a black, mocking void. They were trapped, marooned on a tiny patch of land, surrounded by an ancient evil that was now actively hunting them. Maya was next. Obsessed with finding an answer, she had been poring over her research notes by the light of a lantern, convinced the folklore held a clue. She looked up, her eyes wide with a sudden, dawning horror, as a shadowy figure coalesced from the mist behind her, a tall, shambling form draped in moss and river weed, its silhouette barely human. Before she could scream, a muddy hand clamped over her mouth, and she was dragged backward, disappearing into the suffocating fog without another sound. Ethan and Claire, who had been on the other side of the camp, only realized she was gone when they saw her lantern lying overturned on the ground, its light flickering weakly. The swamp had claimed another. Now only 2 remained, their hope dwindling with the dying embers of their fire. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, seeming to come from all directions at once. The glowing red eyes would appear and disappear in the periphery, a constant, tormenting presence. The demon was toying with them, savoring their fear before the final strike. In a last, desperate act, Claire made a run for the water, believing she could swim to safety. It was a fatal mistake. Ethan watched in hopeless horror as a dark shape erupted from the depths, pulling her under in a flurry of churning water. Her screams were cut short, and then there was only silence and the gently lapping waves against the shore. Alone and broken, Ethan stumbled through the camp in a daze of grief and terror. It was then that he found it, half buried in the mud near the roots of an ancient cypress tree, a rotted leather-bound journal. It was damp and crumbling, but the ink inside was surprisingly preserved. It belonged to a man named Abel, and its pages told a story of betrayal and unimaginable suffering. Abel had been an outcast who lived in the swamp a century ago, a healer who used the old ways and the swamp's natural resources to cure the sick. But when a plague swept through the nearby village, the fearful and ignorant townspeople, led by their fanatical preacher, accused him of witchcraft. They hunted him down, dragged him into the heart of the swamp, and subjected him to a brutal, unjust trial. They cursed his name and his soul, binding him to the very land he loved. In his final, agonizing moments, as they drowned him in the murky water, Abel had screamed a curse of his own, a promise of eternal vengeance upon any who dared disturb his resting place. His tormented, enraged soul had not passed on. It had festered, merging with the swamp itself, becoming the very demon of their legends. The whispers, the red eyes, the insatiable rage, it was all Abel, his spirit twisted into a monstrous form by a century of hatred. The last recorded moments of the expedition are a testament to the horror that consumed them. The final images, recovered from a single floating camera that was later found drifting near the edge of the mire, are chaotic and terrifying. The footage is shaky, filled with the sounds of Ethan's ragged, panicked breathing and his desperate choked sobs. He is seen running, stumbling through the mud, the journal clutched in his hand. The whispers are now clear on the audio, a cacophony of rage and pain. The camera falls, landing with its lens pointing upward from the murky ground. For a moment, there is only the sight of the moss-draped branches against the night sky. Then a figure leans into the frame, blotting out the stars. It is a face, barely recognizable as human, caked in thick, black mud, entangled with river weed. Its features are contorted in a permanent snarl of agony and fury, and from the depths of its mud-caked sockets, two eyes burn with a hellish crimson light, staring directly into the lens, directly at us. The footage cuts to static. The camera was all that ever came back from the Blackwater mire, a silent, floating witness to the massacre. It serves as the only proof of the crew's fate and a chilling confirmation that the demon of the swamp, the vengeful soul of Abel, still lingers. In the dark water, its curse unfulfilled forever, waiting for the next trespassers to venture into its domain.